Just gotta keep your lips flapping. That'll help stay you awake. I sat down in person with games media personality Colin Moriarty to talk about my lifelong doubting faith and the reasons I still hang on to it. Despite being an atheist for many years, Colin said about the interview, out of all the Christian-themed episodes we've done so far, I must readily admit, this one personally made me think about and question my own beliefs the most. You can listen to that conversation right now by following the link below. I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to my first 5 review of The Outer Worlds for PlayStation 4. I played the first 5 hours of this game, and without further ado, these are my first 5 impressions. First up, gameplay basics in general really stood out to me. It totally scratches my itch for a new Fallout game in the vein of Fallout 3, 4, or especially I would say New Vegas, given that it's by the same developers. It's a satirical world with anti-establishment themes, but instead of the establishment being the paradigm of overly simplistic traditional values, as was the case in the Fallout series, here the establishment is greedy corporations, one of which owns the planets that you're exploring. There are quirky, ridiculous characters and factions with these absurd values and priorities in life, and in the midst of that, you're deciding who you're going to side with, what choices you're going to make, and you get to see how those affect the world and the people that are in it. There's lots of dialogue and interactions and dialogue, interactions through your choices, but very open-ended in so many ways, in both the dialogue and in how you carry out the quests and missions. Your character is, as is the case with the Fallout games, this blank slate, and you can decide to treat each situation and quest differently. You're not locked into some kind of a motivation or like a D&D type, what do you call those, like an alignment, or whatever. You just decide what you're going to do, and you can do those things. You could divert randomly from what you've been doing up to a certain point, and the world will react to that. It's ready for that. It's ready for you to kill off quest givers and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So even more so than the Bethesda-made Fallout games, much more in line with Fallout New Vegas, this game is just all about choice. It's not an open world, but I would describe it as an open-ended world, which ultimately is what I'm more interested in when it comes to these types of RPGs. There's not a ton of combat, but it's definitely there when you go outside the main city hub that you kind of start out in, for example. And there are looting and upgrading systems that make the scrounging for items just compulsive for me out in the world, opening up every little container that I find, and there's something in there that I can either break down or sell or use, and so that's really been enjoyable so far. I'm sure as time goes on, as in the Fallout games in recent years, I'll figure out what things I actually want to keep, what things are actually worth counting against my encumbrance, but for now I'm just in that stage of grabbing everything, and figuring out what I want to keep and sell and break down and all that. You can emphasize different types of skill to define your play style, such as crafting, thieving, sneaking, melee, ranged attack, of course, lots of gunplay in this, charisma, which even has effects in combat, and of course has tons of effects outside of combat and dialogue. You have a leadership skill you can pump points into to enhance your AI companions and what they're able to do during combat. It's developed, as I said, by the makers of Fallout New Vegas, and in short, it feels to me a lot like that game, mechanically, on multiple levels. The main difference is that it doesn't have one big world map to explore, but multiple large areas instead. And so far, it doesn't feel any less fun for its differences, because the openness that I really care about in how I interact with the world is still absolutely there. Speaking of the world, that was my second big takeaway from my experience here. I enjoyed 200 hours worth of No Man's Sky, which is, another big spacefaring type of game. But playing The Outer Worlds reminded me of what can be done when the worlds are handcrafted with care, on purpose, instead of kind of procedurally generated by an algorithm, This game is not pushing technical limits visually. There is certainly some texture pop in and stuff like that as I was, moving around, but it's beautifully designed as far as I'm concerned, with something interesting like everywhere I looked that was just kind of begging for me to, go see, oh, what's over there? Oh, that's interesting. What could be found there? What creatures or people or loot might I discover? So far, I've encountered and fought humans, several wildly different types of kind of alien animal creatures, and a small variety of robots. The variety has already been enough to keep me itching to explore and find out what more is out there. So I've been really pleased with that. And the tone of the world so far has a little smirk to it in how it's written, but it's not like a bonkers comedy. It's not like, at least in the first 5 hours, I haven't experienced like any really zany, off-the-wall type stuff. I mean, it's all relative, I suppose, to your sense of humor. But again, similar to Fallout New Vegas. I think the tone is very similar to that game in terms of the balance between seriousness and comedy. Okay, so my third big takeaway was from the music and the sound, which isn't always like a major issue for me, especially the music. I will comment on the sound and just say that the voice acting was great as far as I was concerned, and makes up for the stiff facial animations, But the big standout in sound to me, which hasn't been the case in a video game for me in a while, was the score, the music. The score gives me the impression of a space opera, that is meant to be taken seriously as a space opera. And it's got these majestic orchestral tracks that remind me of the original Stargate movie, if you remember the soundtrack to that at all, or perhaps some classic Star Trek, or if anyone remembers the Green Lantern theme for his featured episode way back when on the Superman animated series. It's this kind of slow, sweeping music that accompanies a beautifully jaw-dropping sight, So that's been just a huge takeaway for me. And yeah, I just I can't. I don't think I can praise it enough. Really, really enjoying the unique sound of that. Okay, and the fourth big takeaway was the combat. Even though I said that there's not like a ton of it, it's a major part of the game, as you might suspect. It's first person, as is the rest of the game, and you can do melee or ranged. The main feature, I would say, of the combat in this game is time dilation. It's got maybe a slightly longer name, but anyway, it's this thing that you have that puts the world in slow motion and on a meter that drains more quickly as you take more actions in combat. So if all you're doing is standing there and looking around, it's going to deplete, little to none. But as soon as you start moving maybe or taking shots, then it's going to deplete much more quickly. So it's very reminiscent of the Fallout 4 VATS system, and I found it really fun to use. But without like an auto lock feature in the shooting combat, or aim assist that I noticed anyway, that slow-mo mechanic feels more necessary than I would like it to be on normal difficulty, given how quickly it drains on you, So I dialed my difficulty back to easy, which is no surprise if you've watched my reviews or know, my skill level and preferences as a gamer. But at least for now, you can change the difficulty during the game, as you wish. For now, I'm dialing it to easy, and then maybe later on I'll put it back up to normal. But that slow-mo runs out faster than I would like it to. I felt like the melee combat is pretty slow and lumbering, so I ignore it entirely, actually. I don't even have a melee weapon at the ready to use. Although, to be fair, I haven't pumped any skill points into that kind of approach either, so maybe it's, better for people that pump, points into it. There are these dodge and block mechanics in the game that you can put points into, but the dodge requires a double tap of X while pushing the left stick in the direction that you want to dodge in. And when I dodge in games, I want it to happen instantly in response to a single button press. At most, a single button press with the stick, moving in the direction I want to roll or whatever, But I want it to be instantaneous, So I just completely ignored this mechanic, and I suspect a lot of players will, choosing to boost armor and health instead, which I think is just a much simpler way to, or dialing down the difficulty, or both, just a simpler way of defending yourself. Your AI companions in combat kind of do their own thing based on an AI preset that you assign to them, which basically just determines how aggressive they're going to be, how quick they're going to be to charge into combat, that kind of thing. You can also press a button during combat once you've gotten your leadership skill to a certain level. It doesn't take that many points put into it, to trigger their special attacks in combat. And these are attacks they get that get their own quickly zoomed in camera, cutscene, almost kind of like quick animation, does extra damage and stuff, and it runs on a cooldown, and so you can't just have them do it, you can't spam the button, but that's kind of a cool, little feature in there. And then finally, the fifth impression that I came away from with this game was the worldview and the themes. And I found that Fallout games in the past, and I would say Obsidian games, all the ones that I've played, and played all the way through anyway, have really given some time and attention to exploring worldviews in some way, either politically, philosophically, or even religiously on some level. There is arguably a liberal political heart motivating the satire about giant corporations, in this game. But the setting is so absurd to me that so far it's largely a straw man that's being attacked. It doesn't seem that interested in preaching something that players are meant to seriously absorb and take into their day-to-day lives and their decisions and their perspectives on corporations and, politics and stuff like that. Early on, there's a religion that's introduced called scientism. Now, in the real world, scientism is actually a philosophical bent toward the scientific method, giving it way more value and weight than one should, taking the position that basically science is the only source of truth, which is a self-defeating statement that can't be demonstrated through the scientific method. But in this game, scientism is a religion teaching that the universe had a creator, like this grand architect, but a creator who stepped away from creation after setting it in motion. The system that the creator set in motion is also referred to as perfect, which is interesting to me. There are some Christians that believe that in its initial state, creation was perfect. I don't believe that Scripture actually indicates that, but anyway, we don't need to quibble about that. Basically, what we have here in this game's, religion is an organized deist religion in pursuit of understanding the grand plan of the grand architect and accepting one's role in that plan. That's meant to bring contentment to the religious person. And scientism toes the line of the company that owns all the planets that you're exploring, emphasizing the importance of work and dedication to your employer and accomplishing things in work, rather than emphasizing the intrinsic value of the individual, as Scripture does. I think there are a mix of good and bad ideas likely at the root of this worldview, though I may disagree with the writers on which parts are good and which parts are bad. The religion and corporations don't value human life. Humans are basically only as valuable as what they produce for the corporation, And so we are clearly meant to see this as bad, which I can get on board with. Value is not based on accomplishment or contribution to society. It is a good thing to contribute to society. It is a valuable thing to contribute to society, but our intrinsic worth is not relative to our contribution to society. That certainly flies in the face of what the Bible teaches. This religion also teaches that the grand architect has no concern for humans, which is in complete contrast to God as we see him revealed in the Bible, who loved us so much that he became human and experienced a horrible death to be reunited with us. This religion teaches that people should be content with their role in the grand architect's ultimate plan. This is also voiced by the establishment in this game, and so it's probably meant to be bad. We're probably meant to think, hey, people shouldn't, seek to be content with their role in the grand plan, But I think that's actually good. Americans have become so individualistic, cheered on by countless stories in our fiction and entertainment about special chosen ones that we're meant to identify with, to the point where we really struggle to be content as unseen, uncredited servants of God's plan, trusting that God is going to give whatever credit is necessary in the end, and as I mentioned earlier, I would disagree with the game's religion when they say that God set in motion a perfect system, these people are encouraged to find their place in the current system. You look at this dilapidated world and you think, well, no wonder one should struggle to be content with their role in this supposedly perfect system, because this world, this whole universe looks like crap. It looks like it's all going down the toilet, And so, I mean, personally, I would say that when God created time in the universe, it was perfectly suited to bring about his ultimate will, but involved some intentional shortcomings, some less than it could be's that were made horribly, horribly worse by the fall of humanity, and will be fixed and perfected in the future new creation that God has planned. But that's really just a side note. Anyway, the game's religion also teaches that they will eventually be able to deduce the properties, like the adherents to this religion will be eventually able to deduce the properties of every particle in the universe and its trajectory, and therefore know everything in all of time and space. Well, they phrase it as saying know everything, but the problem there is that even within this religion's own system, the grand architect would have had to be independent of the universe, independent of time and space, therefore limitless and timeless, since he's the one that created time and space, And so to merely know everything in the universe, even though that seems like a really, really big deal to us, that isn't remotely close to knowing everything when an infinite, timeless being exists independent of the universe. It's also believed by this religion that having all these answers will result in an end to struggle and perfect peace, where no one will ever have to question their path again. This felt, I might be reading too deep into this, which I will just admit up front, but it felt a bit like a pushback against maybe the certainty that some believers profess to have about their faith. I mean, the idea, the establishment, again, is saying no one will ever have to question their path again. As if we're meant, as the player, to think, well, I want to question my path. I don't want to side with the establishment. I want to have the freedom and the ability to question my path and to question the establishment, And so it feels like maybe it's a pushback against that in some way, but for many people, a pushback against like maybe some Christians that the writers have run into that have just professed certainty of their faith, and they just can't relate to that at all, But for many people, myself included, I was going to say, certainty of faith has never come naturally, and questioning has been this major part of the growth and strengthening of my faith. In fact, when I sat down and in person with Colin Moriarty and was a guest on one of his podcasts, this is exactly what we talked about and what I shared. And so I would highly recommend following the link below to that interview to hear more of. We talked for a good while about that. It was a great conversation. Anyway, a religious leader in this story also says that some believe finding all these answers, this, everything knowledge, will unlock our true potential, making us grand architects of a kind ourselves. This has actually a lot more in common with Mormon teaching than biblical Christianity. Although God does want to eventually upgrade and perfect us to be the perfect humans he has always wanted us to be, with desires that are never selfish and bodies that never suffer pain or sickness or death. There were more tidbits, definitely, that I could talk about that I won't mention. I've gone on this point for long enough. And the religious leader featured in the story so far is now one of my party members. So I imagine I've only scratched the surface of what the writers will want to say about religion, God, and the purpose and value of human life, as I imagine I'll be conversing with this character taking on his personal side missions and stuff, throughout the game, and getting to know him and his thinking more. So that should be very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of this game. If you'd like to see more of this game with me, there's a good chance I'll be playing it during Extra Life this weekend. I'm doing a 24-hour marathon starting 6 a.m. this Saturday morning, so stay tuned for more info after this segment for highlights from last year. That's it for now. I would love to get your thoughts in the comments, including what you think of this review format that I'm doing compared to my standard trial and error format. I did it this way mostly this time because of time constraints, but if you like this format better, please let me know. I'd really like to know that. And then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. I should be in bed. I should just go to bed. I'm not gonna go to bed, but I should just go to bed. I used a mortar and pestle to make this concoction, like in freaking Skyrim. This is my one-of-a-kind stamina potion. It's gonna give me powers. Oh, that was good. Oh, I had a little thing there at the end, though. I need a different flavor in my mouth. When I drink my magic potion and I shoot the guns at the bad guys in the cartel, LL, in the cartel. Shoot the bad guys in the cartel. Don't get seen by the bad guy. Why didn't I send my drone in first? Wish I would have thought of that. Oh, but it's scrambled anyway.
They're jamming us.
Guess I won't do that plan today. It's time for the weapons case.
Helicopter.
Get down. And boogie. Get down with your bad self. Can I shoot all of these bad guys? Or take them all down with a side of fries? Take it down. Large size fries. Rip, wow. Just gotta keep your lips flapping. That'll help stay you awake. Thought I saw something. They come upon me, seeking to claim my mind. Oh, I just looked at that one. Just look at that one. No, I didn't look at that one. Getting harder to stay awake, even with the crazy stuff in my veins. Having trouble staying the wakey. Wakey cakey. Just takey. Takey the wakey cakey. Once the nation power is low, frozen wet socks. Ow. Oh my gosh, that's cold. Oh my gosh. What was I thinking? Well, it's cold. Crawls on its belly. The truth will out. Was there another quest here? Another quest giver? Not that I'm gonna find right now. Go to the quest marker. My tummy feels a little weird. Try not to think about it.